I'm going to go ahead and get us started. We are starting back up our local task force meetings after a year or so off. So we're wanting to welcome folks who are going to be watching the video. As we get started, we're hoping to have some really good attendance as the year rolls on here. So we're going to roll right into some topics here and hope that you find the time valuable with us. Hold on. Try again. There we go. I'm just going to start with a few really quick introductions, and I will actually maybe let Lisa go first. We can each introduce ourselves. Might be better.
Okay. Well, still morning. Yep. So good morning. I'm Lisa Kennedy, and I am one of the chairs for our local IU12 task force. This technically would be my third year serving in this capacity, even though we've had a year off. I am a family peer support specialist with the York County Department of Human Services. I'm also president of the school district of the City of York's school board. And I have the pleasure of working with children and families across both York and Adams counties. And actually, I do a lot of stuff statewide as well. So it's a pleasure to be with you today and provide an opportunity to share from a lens of personal experience, as I am one of those families, as well as serving professionally with the ability to touch lives.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, Dr. Bauerlein.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Lori Bauerlein. I am a supervisor of early intervention preschool here at IU12, also shifting into associate director of student services with a focus on early intervention. Our program covers all three counties, York, Adams, and Franklin counties. So we have a very, very large catchment area for early intervention preschool. And we service children in specialized settings, but also in community settings. And we're in over 240 community settings that we service children in. We service around 2,700 children and transition to school age in the fall around 800 children to kindergarten.
Okay. Thank you, Lori. Okay, and Leah.
Hello, so my name is Leah Dietrich, and I am a student services supervisor with a focus on secondary transition. So the students that I'm looking to support are those that are about age 14 to 21, though we look at transition at all ages in the school age spectrum, and really looking at assuring that our students and families are ready for post-school outcomes. So that'll be our focus this morning.
Okay, and I am Patty Wysocki. I'm the Assistant Director of Student Services and District Engagement for LIU 12. I am partnering with Lisa, happy to do that, to kind of bring some new life into the local task force here in our LIU 12 area. We're hoping to really share some things that are valuable for our families as we go through the year. Again, you heard Leah say we're really going to kind of be focusing a little bit on transition today, from preschool to school and from high school out of school. So we're really kind of looking at those two areas. And then we're also going to touch on some mental health topics with Lisa. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and just share some quick updates and information from the state level, and then we will turn it over, I believe, to Dr. Bauerlein. So the first thing that I wanted to share, just because it's been a little while since we've had a local task force that's active in this area. We did not have a local task force active last year or part of the year before. So I just wanted to kind of reshare some information regarding task force and how communication comes across to families and those types of things, and how we work together and interact with each other from the perspective of Lisa and myself, community and school, that kind of thing. So this is actually taken from a document that was shared by the state with all IUs across the state, and it just really talks about the methods of communicating from an IU perspective, the methods of communication and support from the local task force perspective, and where you can make some of those connections. So LIU has a local task force link on our webpage. We'll have all the meeting dates on there for you, information on how to connect to Lisa and myself, information on how to gain access to those local meetings. From the local task force perspective, again, a very safe environment for parents to share information, and also we're really going to want to work to try and get you the information that you need as a parent. So we will work on offering guidance and support in a safe environment for you. Really trying to focus on problem solving, collaborative, solutions based type setting. And I know Lisa has some social media connections that she's going to be using, and we will try and use some of the LIU social media connections to advertise our meetings as we move forward as well. So I linked here at the bottom a couple of just links for your information. The first link is the state task force page. That just gives, I think, some general information about the state task force and then local task force, which kind of, as you're thinking about communication, the information comes from the state and then kind of trickles down to our local task force. So that just kind of outlines what that's all about. And then I also linked the Lincoln Intermediate Unit LTF page on our website currently, that again will have some of this same information on it for you. So I just also wanted to just share some real brief information on updates that we've received. Lisa and I attended a state task force meeting last week, I believe it was, and received some information that we thought maybe just a few of these things might be helpful to share out. So first of all, I just wanted to touch on age of eligibility in Pennsylvania. Last year, the state looked to change that age of eligibility from age 21 up until the last day of your 21st year. So they're calling that age 22. There was some legal challenge to that age of eligibility guidance from the state. So at this point, I believe that's in litigation. So that is still very much up in the air. I would just recommend parents talk to your school districts and see what that looks like from your school district perspective. And certainly it's going to be kind of a fluid situation there. But as we get guidance from the state and what's happening with that litigation, we'll certainly share that with folks. So this is just a document that shares what the Family Support Specialist is all about. It really is a group of folks from Patton, which is our state system of support for parents and for school districts who are involved in special education. This particular support just provides families with support and understanding things like special education law and understanding the processes of what it's like to go through an IEP meeting, what it's like to go through a reevaluation. There are some tools down here. It just kind of goes through and shares what all of those different supports could be. And then there's some contact information at the bottom for parents if they'd like to reach out to gain that support. So another piece, are you still seeing my screen? I flipped back. Okay, very good. Whoop, sorry. That's not what I wanted to do. I just did want to share, there is a Bureau of Special Education and an ARC listening session on November 14th from 2 to 4, and that will be at Patan, which is in Harrisburg, at their central offices. And I will try and have more information about that at our next meeting. That was all the information that I really had to share with you for today, but I'll try and get a little bit more. Also wanted to share, there's a disability inclusive curriculum pilot that's going on across the state. It's a regular education pilot program. the curriculum is accessible for parents. If they'd like to see it, we can certainly share that. I didn't link it here, just because it's several clicks in to get to it. But if anybody is interested, they can certainly reach out to me to get that information. I'm happy to share. A couple other flyers linked. These are all linked from the ARC as a resource, a community to home flyer. This particular information is about home visits for rural communities with health disparities. It's no cost. So this would be, again, another really nice resource. There are certain areas that are eligible. So you have to kind of pay attention to the counties that there is eligibility for this program, because it is targeting rural communities. So I just did want to point that out as well. A disability acceptance through literature book study opportunity. Again, sharing just the link in the PowerPoint. This is kind of a once a month kind of thing that parents can be involved with and bring their students. It is set up in different age groups for folks, and there's a QR code there for folks to link onto. There is a transition parent session that's again, presented by the ARC through their Include Me program. The first session was actually last night, but there is another session in October and one in November that will cover some other things as to why I should work with OVR, why is networking important for my teen's career. And then finally, just the last one I wanted to share was the Parent Cafe series. This is really targeted more towards students who are in early intervention or receiving some home visiting family supports. That's coming up in October, November, and December. So just wanted to share. There's lots of resources to share. I know it's probably a lot in our first meeting. Hopefully we'll kind of tone it down after we get through a couple meetings. This was a lot to share since we haven't met for a while. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Lori and let her just talk about transitioning from preschool into school age. So,
Thank
Lori,
you, Patty. So if I can share my screen, that would be
yes, let
super
me
helpful, and then
stop
we'll
my
go back to
share.
your,
There you go.
thank you. So this is an exciting time that's coming up for not only your children, but also our staff as well, because we are getting ready to send our little ones that we work with onto school age come the fall. So we have a transition booklet that every parent who has a kiddo who is of school age transition eligibility in the fall has access to. If you don't receive a copy, ask the service coordinator or therapist that works with your child, ask them for a copy of our transition booklet, because it has a lot of good information in it, a lot of good resources for you when you are kind of navigating what it's going to look like. So I wanted to walk us through. I won't go through every single slide that I have on here because it's quite long. And this is actually something that you will be invited to a parent meeting in December to talk about transition and what that process is going to be when we start having meetings with you as a family about your child with the district, so they have enough information whenever they come into kindergarten. So this screen that you're seeing now is part of our transition booklet. It's actually one of the main pieces, and it truly is a planning guide. It's a guide for you to utilize to see what the process will be month by month as far as what's coming up and what to expect. So as we go through the slides here, it will let me, there we go. There is a checklist for transition. So this is really important for you to have, because again, it does take you through what's going to happen each month. And it may seem strange that it's going to start in October and your kiddo won't be going to school until the following August, but it starts now. So we are currently working on getting that transition goal into your kiddo's IEP. You're going to have a meeting that shares information about what we're going to do to help you with this process. So that transition goal, it's the very last page of the individualized education plan, that IEP that your child has as they're receiving services from us. Many times, this is going to happen when we have our progress monitoring that's due the end of October. So that way you'll have the most up-to-date progress on your child's goals, along with looking at this transition goal to share information with the district. So the important part with that is make sure that your child's teacher has your correct address, phone number, and school district that you reside in, because come October into the end of November, we have a team that's working on scheduling a meeting between you, the district, and a preschool representative to talk about what transition is going to look like. Does the district have enough information? Will a reevaluation need to be completed? Do they have enough paperwork to provide the services for your child when they step foot through the door on the first day of school in the fall? So it's a very quick meeting. It's about 20 minutes, but our team works to schedule those meetings, and you'll get a letter in the mail letting you know when that meeting will take place. Those meetings happen at the district. They are in typically January or February. Sometimes they go a little bit into March if there's weather delays or there's cancellations because of unforeseen circumstances, but just keep that in mind that you will be getting a letter that you'll have a transition meeting with your school district of residency for your child, and a preschool representative will be at that meeting. In December, that's when we'll actually go through this with all parents and allow you to ask questions. We do these in all the counties. So our program covers the 3 counties, but we'll have one of these in Franklin County. We will have one in New Oxford for our Adams County friends. And we'll also have one in York County as well, typically at York Learning Center, that you'll be invited to. During that time, you'll receive an invitation to attend that meeting with the school district. And then in January, February, that's when those meetings take place between the school district and you as parents of your child who will be transitioning to school in the fall. In March, April, May, should your child have evaluations that need to be completed with the district, and they're going to take care of those, or if they were coming due for evaluations through early intervention, we would do those, but we would invite the district to those meetings. That way they have all the information whenever your child goes to register and goes to school there. The other important part that happens during this time, a lot of the districts have their kindergarten registration open during this time. So they're going to share information back in the January, February meeting with you about what registration looks like and how to go about registering your child for school. And then with this meeting, they'll start to work with you to get that paperwork really fine-tuned, finalized, so that whenever they start in the fall, they're ready to go. This is really important for you to continue to keep that line of communication open with the district. That's really what those January meetings or February meetings are for, just to open that line of communication so that you can start meeting with the district. When it comes to this time, and even at the transition meeting that we have with the district, ask the district to observe. What does the district have to offer? What do the classrooms look like? In this booklet that we have for you, you'll see at the end, we have compiled a whole bunch of different questions that parents have asked in the past. So I want to kind of scroll through this a little bit so that I can show you what the booklet also entails. It talks about what transition is. What does it mean? How are you involved? We just kind of talked about that, what you'll be doing throughout the year. And this is going to take me through all the things that I just talked about, kind of in a more comprehensive way, but it's more verbiage to kind of walk you through what it looks like. And then at the end of this booklet, and I hope it's in here, but there will be a whole list of different questions that you as a family may want to ask your district. For example, If you are out and you are observing a classroom, a regular kindergarten classroom, something that often comes up is, does my child have to go use the restroom by themselves, or does somebody go with them? Or if your child is going to be riding a bus, is somebody going to be outside to help my child get off the bus and make sure they make their way to their classroom? What does that look like? So just some different questions that parents have come up with in the past. Maybe you're thinking about the cafeteria. Cafeterias can be a little bit crazy in school. If we take ourselves back to that time, does my child have to carry their own tray? I remember being a teacher, many times I would be walking around and helping them open those lovely little milk cartons, because they are so fun to open. So it's just those kind of things that you have to start thinking about. The one thing to keep in mind with special education is that eligibility in special education doesn't necessarily equal placement. So if you're looking at the exceptionality, if your child may have autism, it doesn't necessarily mean that your child will be in an autistic support classroom. It truly is that, what does a student need? What's that least restrictive environment? And then they do consider that exceptionality. That's where it's critical that your communication with districts continues to happen, because they may be able to offer services in a least restrictive way than a self-contained classroom. And there are definitions there. If you are curious about what programs your district offers, you need to talk directly to the school district. So just keep that in mind if you are thinking about what type of services your child will get and what they may look like. And this is just a continuum of services. So if you're looking at least restrictive, it's regular kindergarten with no services. Then it continues to build on that. So regular kindergarten with some accommodations. Maybe it's regular kindergarten with some service, whether speech, OT, PT, and so forth. Or it could be remaining in early intervention for another year. We always say, and you'll see this on the next slide that I pull up through the state, that should be a conversation between you and the school district and your early intervention team. Keep in mind that the services that we can offer in early intervention are much less than what you may receive in school age, the 5 days a week and so forth. So those are all of the different ones there. And if you are thinking about homeschool, you need to talk to your district representative about that. If you are thinking about private school and would my child be able to receive services, you would also have to talk to your school district about that one as well. You can also ask the private school because they may already know for you. We always share a list of who the district representative is in our booklet so that you don't have to try to find it. It's right there in the booklet. So we have a list of all of our special education and directors in our districts that we service. So in the back of the booklet, these are great resources for parents. Readiness checklists, it kind of walks you through, can my child make marks on a paper? Can my child do certain things? Where are the levels of my child's, where are their skills? There's observation checklists. When you go to observe in a regular kindergarten classroom, we have checklists in there that you can take with you to see, oh, do they walk down the hall by themselves? Are they expected to sit at a certain table for the entire day? You know, those certain things. We also have it for kindergarten special education classrooms that you can take, and the transition worksheet to kind of walk you through what transition looks like. There are terms and abbreviations that we have as well. Those are in the back because special education has a lot of acronyms that we use different abbreviations for. So we make sure that we put those in there as well. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to ask Patty if she can go to the PowerPoint that she has and click on the link there.
1 sec.
Perfect. So There is a website and it's run through our early intervention technical assistance team. It is what's called their portal, and there is a specific part on transition. So if you scroll down a little bit on here, you will see that there is a whole resource library. It talks about forms, different documents you can use, websites. What does it look like as my kiddo is going from kindergarten or from preschool, early intervention to kindergarten? What does that process look like for me? As you can see, that publication, the second one down there, Patty, that says the transition process. Yep. If you pull that up and you scroll down on this and you download it, it's going to explain what it's going to look like, how it's going to, how you're going to go from one type of service to another. So this walks you through, gives you information. It talks about different options you have, very similar to that booklet that we have that walks you through the month by month. This is going to be very similar. It's going to be more of a snapshot. It's also going to give you information on what do IEPs look like for school age programming and the different types of support from full-time to itinerant to supplemental. So, and again, we use a lot of the same terms in early intervention that they do in school age, but they're going to be spelled out here as well. So super important that you are part of the process. There's a lot of resources out there for you. And if you have any questions, you can certainly reach out to us at the IU and ask to speak to somebody in early intervention preschool, and we'd be happy to help you out.
Thank you, Lori.
You're welcome.
Okay. We're going to go ahead and move on to our older learners now. I'm going to shift to Leah. And Leah, do you want me to stop sharing so you can, or which would you prefer?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. I'll share from here. Give me a second to get that up. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
All right, wonderful. So we talked about, transition from preschool to school age. So what happens though when, my child graduates high school? What do I need to know? That world can seem a little big and overwhelming. And I know as a parent, for me and my own children, sometimes I tend to say, oh, I've got a few more years yet, right? It'll be okay. And then all of a sudden graduation hits. So looking to prepare you and maybe understand some of that thought process as a family, or, as an individual who's making that transition. What do I need to know? What should be important to me? I tried to keep this a little bit more focused because the resources can be very overwhelming. But of course, if there's any additional information, we can help and support you in obtaining that as well. I do have my email listed on here. So if you did have any follow-up questions or needed additional resources, I'm happy to share those with you as well. So I think the first thing to consider as a family when looking at post-secondary, in school age, we talk about this word entitlement. In that, school age students who have an IEP, they're entitled to a free and appropriate public education. This includes specialized instruction and related services tailored to meet your child's individual needs. As part of this, families are a huge part of that IEP team process, should be all the way through. But a lot of the ownership of this does fall to the school district. They have to watch, compliance. They have to follow through with what's in that IEP. So many pieces of this process is held with that school district to make sure that these things are happening. Of course, with that valued input from the family. So as we kind of go along, and I know me as a parent, I'm like, their teachers have it, they're rolling, they're good to go, right? And then bam, graduation, oh no, it's back on me. So we look at this balance between entitlement and eligibility, because when an individual graduates, no longer because I qualified for special ed services are things going to just continue to happen and be in place. Post-school services have an eligibility criteria. The individual, that young adult, is responsible for seeking, obtaining, and maintaining the supports that they may be eligible for. And as part of this transition process in school, we really look to support families in understanding what those resources are, providing those supports for connections, But a lot of the pieces do fall to the family because we can't do it for you. They don't let us. We can only go so far as a school. The ownership really does fall with the family and that individual. So one of my great encouragements is to start early so that you have all of those pieces in place. While your school team's here and helping you, we can help support you in those initial steps, help identify those goals for your child. So that way you are all set and ready to go when your child graduates. And with that eligibility, I think one of the big pieces is maintaining the support. So just because an individual is found to be eligible for a service and maybe a case is opened for that individual, and you have to look at each of those agencies for what the continued eligibility or maintenance requirements are. But sometimes if the individual doesn't maintain contact with that caseworker, service provider, whoever that be, sometimes a case is dropped. If maybe you move or a phone number changes or things like that, and that agency doesn't know of that change, sometimes that service can be dropped and then that individual's without services and they need to start again. So just a great encouragement to maintain those relationships with the agencies so that all of those supports needed can be in place and can remain in place, not only while in school, but post-graduation. So consider some considerations in preparing for adulthood. This planning for us in school starts at age 14 or sooner. And it looks at identifying what supports might be needed and how to find and access those services. So as a family, a challenge is not only considering those immediate services that your child might need upon graduation, but also consider long-term planning. I checked in with one of my colleagues that does a lot of the meetings for LIU students and their families about 2 years prior to graduation. And I said, hey, what is the biggest aha moment or oh no that families express when they get to that point? And it comes down to two things she shared. First, am I connected with MHIDD? If I was eligible for that service, did I maintain that relationship? That's number one, because we then have a limited time to support in that process. But the number two is the long-term planning. When they start to talk about, as my child enters adulthood, not only then, but as they age and the family ages, what are those contingency plans for that individual support as they get older? That's something that's okay to talk about now while your child's in school to start thinking about, so we can help you in that process to support that later on in life, those later on in life needs. Looking again at services, keeping in mind that post-school services are not guaranteed, and learning how to navigate the systems of support is critical. And again, allowing us to help you in that process. Looking at a coordination of services, collaboration with various agencies is important to assure an individual has a full range of services in place, whatever they may be eligible for, whether that's MHIDD, Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, supports through the ARC, transportation services, the list goes on and on. But understanding what are those services that might be important to your child and coordinating them together. What are they needed and how do we talk to each other and make a meaningful plan for that individual? And another piece that's so important, self-advocacy, assuring that your child has the skills that they need to learn what services are available, how to advocate for themselves, and what they need to be successful in adulthood. And I know that in many cases, there are still family supports available and ready. But again, what happens? What's next? If I'm not here, did I prepare my child for advocating for themselves and knowing what they'll need and how they can seek that and obtain those supports and services? So looking at the IEP team and how we can help you and when does this happen? I mentioned starting at age 14 or when your child is 13 years old, because they'll be turning 14 within the duration of that IEP. Transition planning will be discussed at your child's IEP team meeting. In preparation for this, think about post-secondary education. Does your child want to go on to college, technical or trade school? Would there be training needed or for support on the job? What does that look like? What are their interests and what do they need to know or do to take those next steps as far as their education? Again, we can help you with this, but be thinking about that and having those conversations with your child. employment. What are your child's interests? What do they want to do? What is the pathway to support their employment goals? Do we need to look at connections with the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation or any other resources to support that? Maybe looking also at things like driver's license or rapid transit. How am I going to get to and from my job? What supports are needed to build to employment? And lastly, independent living. And this really covers the gamut. Not only will I be living independently, but even if I'm in a supported living situation, what will my child need to know or do to be able to live as independently as they can possibly live? Again, looking at transportation, looking at community access, living arrangements. What does that mean for your child, and what supports do we need to build and support your child in getting there? I have a few resources, and I truly mean just a few. There are so many resources out there and available to families. So this is just a tiny, tiny snapshot of things that are available that could be helpful to you. One of the resources that I love is this Planning for Future checklist. And it just takes you through some different things to consider at different stages, from 14 to 15-year-olds, 15 to 16, bridges on 16 to 17 on the second page here, and then finally 18 to 21. And this resource breaks it up between education and training, employment, community living. Again, it's not comprehensive, but it could really help you focus in on first, these are some things I need to think about, look for, maybe goals to set, people to connect with, questions to ask at each stage for my child. On the bottom, I love that it has the numbers for adult agencies, Bureau of Autism Services, CareerLink, Department of Human Services, ODP, et cetera, et cetera. So if you needed just that quick, I know I have to search and look here and there, where's that number? This is nice because it gives you just some brief checkpoints for you and your child, but then also has those agencies who are going to be those lifelines for you. Call them, ask the question, see what supports they may have for you or what ways that they might be able to help. So bouncing back over here, just another option of a resource to look at. We do have a Trello linked on the LIU website. There's a variety of resources broken up by county, some employment resources, post-secondary training resources, independent living, transportation, very specific parent resources, et cetera, et cetera. Just different things for you to look at. Snapshot, something might catch your eye, catch your interest. That may be a support for you or your child. So I encourage you to look that up as well. And lastly, this item, the ODP Gold Book, is a very comprehensive look. If you may have a child who has an intellectual disability, who has autism, or who may have a medically complex profile that would receive or some supports or services. The Gold Book is a comprehensive picture of planning and what you need to know or do as a family. I will say it's a little overwhelming, so it might be something that you want to look at, take a page or two or three at a time, you know, sit on it and then go back in. It's not something you want to pull out and just read in one shot. But it could be a very nice guide for you. And again, questions to ask, some family planning resources, some things for your child to look at so that you can plan effectively for that transition to adulthood. And lastly, Life Course, which the resources for Life Course are built into that Gold Book as well. It uses Life Course resources as well. But if you would like something as a family, just for some look fors, ooh, I've got that circle going. There we go. Something that you could look at to help support planning. This tab here on the left is for the individual or their family to look at. Let's see if I can scroll down. There's a Learn More tab. And then again, if you scroll all the way down, there's some videos embedded in there. I think that's the early years piece. But on the bottom, there's some person-centered tools, some family perspective tools, some worksheets. You can pick and choose what you like to do, know, or use. But they could also support you in navigating that transition to adulthood. The end of our slides here, again, are just looking at that future checklist. But again, encourage you to reach out to your child's case manager, to your district if you are not sure. if you have questions, all of that, reach out to that team, be part of that IEP team meeting, ask, what do I need to know as a parent? And if you're not sure, you don't know what to ask, again, check out one of these resources here, or you can reach out to me and I'd be happy to guide you in that. Thanks.
Right, thank you, Leah.
Stop sharing. There you
Okay.
go.
All right, I'm going to share my screen again. And Lisa, if you're okay, I will just kind of drive for you. You just tell me.
Okay, that's
what the
fine.
script says.
Yep.
Does that sound okay? Right.
Yes, can I first say that again, as one of those families, I do have, my children are adults now and I have grandchildren. But in serving families and again, being those families who have accessed the services that are available in our county with the IU and in our state, I just want to applaud Lori and Leah for the detailed information that was shared today. It seems like a lot of information and it is, but I'm telling you as someone who has navigated those systems and needed those services, utilized those services, now share those resources with other families. The information that's been shared with you today is quite powerful. Again, a lot of information, and you take it down, take it and break it into chunks to massage it and take it in, but the resources that they highlighted, the opportunity to meet and dialogue with your teams to provide the best care for your child moving forward, and that advocacy piece, which we will talk about in later meetings. We will talk about the importance of advocacy and developing a voice and how to ask questions, and the fact that you can ask questions, because many of us as families along the way feel that we're inadequate because we may have a child that has some need, be it physical, mental health, emotional behavior, whatever the case may be. We feel inadequate. And so we look to whom we consider to be the experts, and those are the staff that you work with on a regular basis. So I just want to say kudos for the work that our IU does, for the resources that are available for families and those of us who are in the trenches, oftentimes living crisis to crisis and dealing with a lot. So I thank the IU and the staff for the work that they do, and both presentations were jam-packed full of things that families need to know and oftentimes may not be aware, and then making that connection between the importance of a relationship between the IU family and school district. So thank you. So we're going to wrap up a little bit of this section just talking about self-care, and I wanted to start here because it is often one of those areas that that is not really considered a great deal. And again, I'm going to speak about self-care from a personal lens in that we're usually the last ones on the list because we may have children or other loved ones that we're taking care of, that they always come first. And so I want to encourage you to recognize the value of self-care and putting yourself first and taking care of yourself, and the importance of doing two things: checking in with yourself and then being allowed to ask those questions. So when you're checking in with yourself, it's really asking yourself how you're doing. Most of the time we spend our time asking that question of others that we are providing care for, we're taking care of, or supporting, and we may even be transporting other children or other family members. We're always checking in with everyone else, and rarely is someone checking in with us. So really taking the time to ask yourself, and maybe you have to set aside a specific time of the day. Maybe it's the first thing you get up in the morning. Maybe it's at your lunch break. Maybe it's at the end of the evening when you're ready to retire for the evening. How are you doing? That is important and valuable as families. I also encourage those of us who work in this human service field in whatever capacity. We usually are the ones who are caregivers. And again, as professionals, we don't take that time to check in with ourselves as well. So it's important that we do that. The importance of asking questions. Again, it is a place that oftentimes families don't feel comfortable in doing. which doesn't mean they don't have tons of questions, because in a lot of cases they do. But they just feel as though they don't have, they're not comfortable, they don't have the ability, they're not sure how to ask the questions. And oftentimes they're not sure if they're talking to the right person to ask the question. So I encourage you to, one, document your questions, track them down. Don't try to commit them to memory, because in most cases with so much going on, you will likely forget it. So I encourage you to write those questions down and then talk to your team about them. The opportunities that Gloria and Leah talked about, the many different ways and times throughout the transitioning process that you will be together with your team. So have those conversations and ask the questions and engage along the way. Next slide, please. Expectations. We all know and work under expectations in almost every capacity of what we do, but it is important to sort of recognize a couple of things when it comes to expectations, particularly in the lane of supporting and advocating and providing care for someone who may have additional needs or atypical needs or more in-depth needs, be they again in what other lane, whether they're physical, emotional, behavioral, it doesn't matter. What is expected, what's being asked of me, what's being asked of the child or the loved one that you care for, and has that been communicated effectively? Are you fully aware of what those expectations are? Many a times, because we're in the IEP process or have other types of service plans based upon maybe some other needs that your child may have, all of them have goals and expectations and guidelines and structure around what is expected, what I need to know, what I need to do, what does my child need to do, where does my child need to be, where should I be, where should the team be? All of those things have expectations, so it's important to have some clarity around those expectations. Are you prepared to meet the expectations? And oftentimes this is important for families to recognize that may be where you want to ask a question. Because if you have goals and expectations in a service plan, in an IEP, or of a team, and you, one, don't understand what that expectation means or is asking of you, or two, you don't have the capacity to achieve that expectation, but no one has said to you, do you have a need? Do you understand? Are you capable? Do you have the resources you need to achieve those expectations? It is important. And so when we come back in 30 or 45 days and we connect again and try to reevaluate what we've achieved at this point, and we recognize that there's an expectation we haven't met, and we haven't met that expectation because no one talked about my capacity or ability to be able to do it. Being thoughtful and inclusive, you're fine. Oh, no, fine, you're fine. Go ahead. Being thoughtful and inclusive about those expectations are important too. Who all is at the table when those expectations are developed? Are you including your child or your loved one that you're providing care for? Are you at the table as the responsible party with the team on those expectations? You have a voice there as well. Again, that piece about self-care should be done often, regularly. And my goal is always, we all live by our calendars. Whatever's on the calendar gets done. Put your self-care on your calendar. I don't care if it's 5 minutes to just walk away from your desk. Put that time on your calendar, be intentional about it, and consider what you can do for yourself that doesn't cost anything. Because when I'm talking about self-care, most times I'm talking about things that don't cost us anything. It's a matter of taking the time to actually do it. So maybe it's taking that extra 30 minutes an evening and pulling the book off the shelf that you bought 3 months ago with every intentions of reading it, but you haven't had the time or made the time to do it. Be thoughtful about what you want to do, but build something into your schedule that says, I need to do something for me. And whatever you decide that piece of self-care is for you, it is for you. So if it appears to be more work or looks like more work to other people, is that what you need to do for your self-care? If it works for you, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. What matters is you're taking time for yourself to actually do that, having an awareness of it, building it into your schedule, and then making it happen. Next slide, please. And again, mental health is something we're going to talk about, and sort of weave into many of our meetings throughout this school year. Not only because we may be working with individuals that may have a mental health diagnosis, but everyone has mental health, meaning that we all have a piece of ourselves that we need to take care of. And many of us do that by getting our yearly physicals, or we go to the dentist twice a year and we take care of all of those physical needs. But do we get our checkup from the neck up? Do we take the time to really look at what it is that we are experiencing and what we're going through? Have we recognized the impact of COVID and going through 2 years of isolation and knowing us as big people, our struggles we are encountering with that? So we know that young people and children are having some struggles as well. So it's important to recognize those signs. Again, not necessarily meaning that you need or have a diagnosis that's related to mental health, but we do have care that we need to provide to ourselves as well. And all of those pieces connect together, as indicated, the physical pieces, the mental pieces, and the social emotional pieces we all possess, and we all have to do a really good job of recognizing where we are each and every day on our journey. Next slide, please. Some key things to think about and being successful in processing through that self-care piece and recognizing challenges that we may be having within our own personal lives, taking care of our own mental health while taking care of needs of other ones. So there's 5 pieces here that talk about connect, give, take notice, keep learning, and being active. All things that we need to recognize along the way that we have to do to be our best selves, to be available to others. Again, most of us who work in this human service field take on a whole lot. Many of us as families take on a whole lot, and we may be caring for more than one loved one. So we may be raising a child, but we may also be that sandwich generation family where we may have elder parents that we're caring for as well. And what does that look like when you're building plans and developing strategy for your child in this world of special education and what their needs are? And then you may shift later on in the day because you are now taking care of an elder parent and what are the needs and requirements for them as well. So balance is going to be key, and looking at those connections, paying attention to things, deciding what you need to learn. As both Leah and Lori shared, a lot of information that's available, tons of resources that are available that we don't have to struggle out there on our own. And oftentimes the question is, where do you start? Because there's so much, and sometimes it's really just taking that first step. And so the first step is visiting some of the resources that were shared today. While there are tons of them, they're very easily understood, easy to access, and are at your fingertips for you to be able to utilize. So let's take a look at that as well. Next slide, please. Again, quickly just highlighting on the mental health piece, every state has a children's mental health law, and every age in that state is different as well. Ours is 14, and I'm just realizing I didn't give you the updated version of this act, because the initial act was Act 147. The new act is Act 65, where they updated in 2020 and made some clarifying changes to that law. And that just basically says that children at the age 14 are able to seek supports in the way of therapy or treatment if they deem that they need to. And this is not saying without parental support. This is not to imply that children are off or eligible to do so, but what it is really doing is saying that if there is a child who feels that they are struggling and they are interested in seeking some services, there's a process and a way that at age 14 children can do so. Next slide, please. Quickly, numbers don't lie, and recognizing some of the things that are on the screen aren't new numbers to us. So some key things to think about when it comes to challenges, struggles, the impact of mental health is recognizing we've got to check in with our kids too. And oftentimes we spend a lot of time checking in with our spouses, with our adult family members, and because children are resilient, and they are, we oftentimes don't check in with them to really see how they're doing, so it's important to do that. The importance of developing routines, maintaining them, scheduling bedtimes. They all seem like mundane things, but they are important things to the success of the child and the family as well. Doing your best to plan ahead when you can is always helpful as well. And then when supports are necessary, professional help is always available to us. And the opportunities, as displayed earlier with resources are plenty. We live in a resource-rich county. We live in a resource-rich state. So make sure that we are taking advantage of what is available. And the first step is usually asking that question and recognizing you may not know where to go, but ask someone. We're happy to be available to you and provide those resources. Next slide, please. Again, here's a list of resources, and many of them were probably already included in tons of resources that Lori and Leah shared. But know that also I'm available and happy to help in any capacity. And as someone who has accessed and navigated services, not just in our county, all over the state, happy to be available to talk about experiences, to talk about needs, what it was like if you are embarking on a new journey, and this may be new to you in this experience of special education, IEPs. What is an IEP? I don't know what to do with all this paperwork. They're asking too many questions. I don't think I know enough. All of the things that we say to ourselves along the way, please cut yourself a break and recognize that we are here to help you. Next slide, please.
Okay, thank you so much, Lisa. Yeah, lots of information, lots of really good information today. So hopefully, we definitely will be sharing this on LIU's website. All of the links in the PowerPoint that we kind of went through today, some of them very quickly, you'll have access to through the PowerPoint. The slideshow will be there as well to kind of talk you through what the links were about. And again, as you have questions, please, please, please reach out. Our contact information, Lisa and my contact information is on the next slide, which I'll get to in a second. So anytime, please reach out with questions. We are, as Lisa said, definitely here to help. To kind of walk through this with you because it's a lot of information and it is, I agree, completely overwhelming. If you've never seen any of it before, it's a lot. So any help that we can provide, we're happy to do so. Just wanted to share real quickly our upcoming meetings. We'll have our next meeting will actually be in October. And then we pretty much, we will not try and fit a meeting in December. We decided just with everybody's schedules and the holidays, that might be a bit much, but pretty much every month other than that, we will be having regular meetings. So we hope to, we definitely hope to have some more people participating when the meeting is happening, but we also know that the recording will be there for folks to look at and refer to. And I think that's very valuable as well. So just again, last as promised, contact information for Lisa and myself. And if anybody viewing the PowerPoint or reading through any of the information after the meeting have questions for either Leah or Lori, you can certainly reach them through myself. I will put folks in contact with them if I don't know the answer to the questions. So I thank you very much, ladies, for helping with today's meeting and sharing information on transitions. And Lisa, definitely that self-care piece as you're weeding through some of this just immense task of educating a young child. It's quite a bit. So any last thoughts, comments?
I just want to say thank you again to Lori and Leah, because it is not easy working with the public. I can admit that. but it is something that we all are typically passionate about. And so I appreciate the sharing today of the many resources and highlighting them and going to the links so that folks can actually visually see what is available. So again, thank you for being with us today and sharing. And I'm happy to know that we have a talented team at the IU that takes care of our little kiddos across all 3 counties. So thank you again. And Pat, thank you for your help as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, well, we will end our meeting.